We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks, and tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. We are not in a constitutional crisis, but maybe Byron York disagrees. Byron York is a Washington Examiner columnist, lead senior political reporter, Fox News contributor, and level-headed. Did I miss something, Mr. York? Are the rebels at Concord? Are we in a civil war? What's going on?
Well, I have to agree with you on this one. I saw your response on Twitter today to the constitutional crisis line, and I think you're right.
It's ridiculous.
We're certainly not in a constitutional crisis, although I would be a little worried if Judge Engelmeyer was interpreting the Constitution.
There are a lot of bad judges. There are a lot of good judges. There are a lot of decisions which will go one way or the other. The point is, it's just the way it's set up to work. The branches disagree with each other. There are checks and balances. There are courts of appeals. There's Supreme Court. Unless and until Trump says, no, I'm not going to do it, goes full Andrew Jackson. The court has made their order. Now let them enforce it. We're not in a constitutional crisis.
No, we're not. Although, don't you think this gives, now you know much more about this than I do, don't you think this gives some energy to the move that's been afoot for quite a long time, that a lot of people at very high levels in the legal world and in the government world think, we really shouldn't have a situation where a single federal district judge somewhere can issue a nationwide injunction against, an act of the president.
Yes, it does. In fact, Justice Gorsuch has hinted at this in some of his concurrences. And
so this, I think, gives some momentum to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's ridiculous because the idea that an 84-year-old district judge appointed by Reagan dismissed. Now, I happen to disagree with the birthright citizenship executive order, but there's an argument to be made, to be heard, and to be weighed. And this guy threw a tantrum and said, this is wildly unconstitutional. It's not wildly unconstitutional. It's never been decided. It's a case of first impression. And so I don't like judges doing that, grandstanding, but we're kind of used to that by now, and it's not a crisis. Kind of like theater.
If I could bring up a kind of a specific example, I don't know if you've been talking about this NIH thing, the National Institutes of Health.
No, I have not been.
Indirect. Well, it's another one of these things that has brought a lawsuit and just a lot of hysterical reporting, which is basically NIH gave out about last year about $35 billion in grants for medical and science research. Now, of that $35 billion, $26 billion went to direct research, and $9 billion went to administrative costs and overhead, what are called indirect costs. Okay, and so a lot of people have thought for quite a long time that $9 billion is pretty high. It averages indirect costs paid by NIH average between 27-28%, and have gone up in some cases, and we know about them, to 50 and 60%.
I got two questions, Byron.
Crazy.
How much went to the Wuhan virology lab?
That's an excellent question, and I don't know the answer.
Okay. Second one, did any of that money go to institutions like Harvard with a $50 billion endowment?
No, but I mean, a lot of them, yes. A lot of them have gone to universities with huge endowments.
And
the universities are charging huge amounts for, quote, for overhead, for administrative costs, and the NIH is paying them. So, anyway, they're paying average between like 28%, okay? Well, what the crazy men at DOGE did was they looked at, NIH is not the only institution that gives out research dollars in the country. There are lots of private foundations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. There's something called the Gates Foundation as well. There's the Zuckerberg Initiative, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I mean, there's Smith Richardson. There are a lot of them. What do they do about the indirect costs? Well, it turns out they put caps on the amount of indirect costs that the grant recipient can spend. And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is 15%.
Which is reasonable.
The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is 12%. The Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, 15%. The Smith Richardson Foundation, 10%. So what they did, what these insane, crazy men at DOGE decided was, let's cap NIH indirect cost spending at 15%, at the high end of what private foundations allow. and that will save a lot of money and allow the same sort of research.
Byron, you're getting dangerously close to reporting here. I have not seen those numbers about Smith Richardson, Bill and Melinda Gates Fund. Where did those numbers come from?
They came from NIH. They did a log. At the same time, the Washington Post and other media outlets began going crazy. NIH handed out this fact sheet that about what the private foundations were spending. Now, so they do this. NIH does this, and the press says the New York Times headline is Trump administration cuts put medical progress at risk, researchers say.
It's so silly.
CNN's headline, researchers decry disastrously bad idea, quote, as NIH slashes payments for research. Now, the Huffington Post just says Trump sledgehammers NIH funding catastrophic hit to science. And Patty Murray, the senator, comes out and says Americans are going to pay for this with their lives.
What are they going to do when a meteor comes at us? I really do not know how they're going to up the adjective ante when the meteor hits us.
I don't know. That's a good point. When you've already taken it to 11. I mean, is there a 12? I don't know.
Byron, I got a question for you. I do think we have a crisis coming on Saturday, and Saturday at noon. That's a real international crisis. Lives are at stake. Hostages are dying. They're being starved to death and tortured. Is that a crisis? I think that's a crisis.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a constitutional crisis.
Correct.
But certainly it's a crisis for Israel. It's a crisis for the other side. And Donald Trump himself has come out, I think it was yesterday, when he set the Saturday deadline. All these hostages need to be released by Saturday or all hell's going to break loose. Now, you remember that Trump had said that that the Gazans, the Palestinians, had to release all of the prisoners by the time Trump became president, or all hell could break loose. Well, Trump was more patient than that, but I think he can't keep saying this.
Well, he dialed it back. He dialed it up once he saw the condition of those. He's a visual man. And stand by, Byron. I'm going to talk to you during the break and bring it back if you've got some time. So I'm back with Byron York. My interview with Rachel and John is posted over at hughhewitt.com, the transcript. 2 days ago, before Donald Trump said, Saturday noon, everyone or hell breaks loose, John said, all the hostages now. And I thought he was right. Today, he and Rachel didn't walk it back, but they made it very obvious they're more concerned with the hostages' lives than anything else, and they don't want the war to resume. I don't think there's, 400 Israelis died in that war in Gaza. The parents of the dead Israeli soldiers don't want Hamas left in power. I think Israel's going back to war on Saturday, and I wonder, do you think we're going to support them in ways we haven't done before, and do you think Iran might be on the target list?
Well, I think they are going to go back to war on Saturday, and you often have this situation in hostage situations in which the government forces believe they have to be tough hostage takers, and of course the relatives of the hostages, if they feel there's any chance their loved ones can be saved, they want the government to hold back. I mean, this is a natural tension, totally understandable. Now, as far as us helping the United States, helping in ways that we haven't before, I think when Trump became president, pretty much at noon on January 20th, we released some weapons like 2,000-pound bombs to Israel that Biden had been holding back. So I think we've already, in the Trump era, have already helped Israel in ways that weren't being done in the Biden years.
All right, I have two more questions for you. One, let's jam in here quickly. Is the reconciliation thing going to get done or not in the House?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I was when you called, I'd been writing on a piece all day about the Biden economic hangover, going through all the spending and the inflation and all of the useless stuff. And one of the things that Congress is actually trying to do is maybe claw back some of the money that was just wasted and hasn't even been spent yet from the Inflation Reduction Act. It's hard to get anything done with 217 Republicans in the House. Now, I still don't think that Elise Stefanik has resigned. You and I have talked about this. There's 218 right now, Republicans, 215 Democrats. When Stefanik does resign, it'll be 217 to 215, meaning you
they
can't
need everybody.
lose even one vote.
Yeah, they need everybody.
So
Stand by, Byron. We'll come back on the network. I have one very interesting question to ask you. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Byron York is my guest. He is the senior political correspondent at the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor. Byron, there's a shooting star constellation of news stories all over the place. One of the shooting stars that went by so fast, very few people noticed it, is that when asked if J.D. Vance was his successor, Donald Trump said no. I mean, I just said, huh? What is that? Because Ike wouldn't have said no.
I thought that was striking. That was in Bret Baier's interview on Super Bowl Sunday of Trump. And he said no in a rather emphatic way, too.
Well, what do you rate? I didn't ask Bret about it because they moved on pretty quickly. And I think maybe he was surprised. I talked to Bret earlier today. Were you surprised by that?
Not when I thought about it. I do think it's kind of early to actually declare Vance to be Trump's successor. Now, Bret did ask, if I remember, a follow-up question, which was, okay, you're saying that right now because it's just 3 weeks into the administration, but come midterm time, J.D. Vance will want an endorsement from you, and of course, I think Bret was entirely right about that, but that's not something that Trump really wanted to face at this particular moment. So, I was a little surprised because I think Vance has turned out to be a spectacularly good choice for Trump. On the other hand, Trump is a man who likes to be in the center of everything. And, I mean, he is now in a way that even he could not have imagined.
He wants to pick the nominee to succeed
in Washington right now.
Right.
Everything.
He wants to pick his
so
successor.
He's not ready to talk about a successor.
Yeah, and he gets he won't talk about it until 2028, I think.
Yes, maybe January 19th, 2029.
Yeah, well, we got to get to the Iowa caucuses in 2028, and I don't think he'll sit them out. It would be very, very unusual. I can't remember what Ike did with RN in 1960. Do you?
Let's see what 19.
Nixon became vice president in 53, ran for president in 1960, was nominated. I think Stassen, but I can't remember anyone else running against him. But I don't know when I should know this. I ran the Nixon Library for twice and should know that, but I don't.
Hadn't Eisenhower declined to endorse Nixon for a while? As a matter of fact, was famously asked about Nixon's accomplishments and said, if you give me a few days,
I remember that. I don't know, though, by the time they got the convention, whether or not he had gotten the full-throated endorsement. Byron York, always a pleasure. Watch him on Fox News, read him in the Washington Examiner. Press on, Byron. This is a shooting gallery of stories that you just pick one and you focus on it every day. Byron's got. I learned stuff today about the overhead rates, and that is reporting. It's occurring on the Hugh Hewitt Show.